Okay, we're recording. So today on the podcast we have Georgia. Georgia is my meditation buddy, and as we just discussed off the recording, friendship in progress. So
Hmm.
I guess I can give you just some space to tell people who are listening who you are and how we know each other.
Okay. Uh, Great. Thanks. Thanks for that introduction, James. Um, yeah, I we know each other from the meditation center space that we both went to in Sayville, New York, on Long Island. Um, and the the instructor there was Corey Mascara, and he was my first introduction to this practice. And then you came to guide meditations a few times, and I always found them so lovely. Um, I am I have continued my meditation practice, uh, and I am an artist living in Brooklyn right now. Um, I'm 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 an actor. I'm a performance artist. I like to tell visual stories through images, and I am getting my master's degree in applied theater right now. So I still I I'm still unsure how I'm going to use what I'm learning, but it's invaluable growth that I've made through this program at CUNY SPS, and I'm also I, uh, I teach. I teach meditation. I substitute teach, um, and yeah, I do.
So you do a
I do.
bunch of things,
Yeah.
doing a lot of different things. That's that's sounds wholesome. All of those things sound wholesome and uh, well, potentially deep in their own ways. The the way that I guess you could say like the forward to this podcast episode is you had posted a message on Facebook, and I read the message, and are you comfortable with me reading the message here?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll give the story a little bit about it, and then I'll read it. I read it, and it really struck me as something that has the potential to, if we were to unpack that, to gain a lot of wisdom from the conversation. And I thought maybe the people listening to the podcast could benefit as well. But the way that I teach meditation is usually in a two-step process. It's meditate and reflect. Meditate and reflect. What that means is, like, if you sit in meditation, if you sit in silence, usually there's some sort of experiential learning that's coming up. But I also find it equally as valuable to reflect on what it is that we have learned. That's why if you were to take an MBSR course with me or with anybody, there's the practicing, and then there's the breaking out into groups to talk about what is coming up in your experience. I kind of see this as that you you did some deep meditative and silent work, um, and this could be a time that we can reflect on it. I will. I have it written here. I'm going to read it, and then we'll talk about it. Since the start of this summer, I've wanted to cultivate a deeper sense of oneness with all things around me. I entered into the woods to listen, observe, and find great stillness in my heart. This is not always easy, and as I am a young woman with bipolar disorder, it's a true roller coaster ride each day, really each moment. I can get lost in my thinking mind that perpetuates all my fears and desires. I come back to stillness. I remind myself that I don't need to gain anything, desire, or grasp onto anything, fear, in order to be whole. This has helped me feel a sense of spiritual and emotional liberation. I'm going to keep diving deeper into what this world selflessly offers us. My exploration continues. Nature, I ask that you please reveal more of your secrets, and I have gratitude for the blessings that are yet to come. So my first reflection of that is just admiration for the vulnerability. Like, that is your I mean, that's your internal stuff, and there's a certain level of courage that comes with broadcasting that. And I think that it could be, there are potentially a lot of people that are experiencing similar things that have a lot that they could connect with there. Me personally, I mean, the reason I'm asking you on the podcast is because I connect with what you wrote personally. Um, and I have specific questions about it, but I guess at this point, with me reading that, with me saying this, how do you receive this?
I perceive that as very, I feel very vulnerable. Um, and I'm right now I'm welcoming that because that's a part of my truth. And I feel like I've been not letting that part out and kind of hiding. And it feels a little scary, but also freeing at the same time.
I think there's kind of like a yin and yang type experience with like stepping into those fears and stepping into that which is scary in that way, that vulnerability, the equal and opposite experience. It can have a freedom to a liberation. I know for myself, um, I'm a therapist as well as a mindfulness teacher, and there's a, maybe this is my view that I'm projecting, but I think also there could potentially be a true external view looking in of, this person is a therapist and this person is a mindfulness teacher, so they are calm, they are peaceful, they understand things and have wisdom. And while I do have wisdom from my experiences, a lot of that, the wisdom comes from uh, dissonance in my system. Like,
Mm.
I wouldn't be looking at this stuff if there wasn't first dissonance. Um, so that, like, equal and opposite sides of the same coin, like you're speaking about, like the vulnerability and the fear, but also the liberation and the freedom that comes with being open first within yourself to look at this stuff, and then to be, then to say it out loud. I think, like, in particular, so this is a podcast platform, so there are going to be people that are listening to this. It took me some time to get to the point where I could feel comfortable speaking about the dissonance that I feel. When I say dissonance, to be more specific, anxiety, history with social anxiety, and I do, I do still feel symptoms of anxiety, although through my path I have a much different relationship with my anxiety now. It's not that it's gone, I just have a different relationship with it. I think that's that end of that thought. But I have questions. If you're open to them, let's see. You wrote, "I remind myself that I don't need to gain anything. Desire." Can you talk about that?
Sure. And I just want to acknowledge that I very much appreciate how you are sharing that part of yourself, your inner terrain, and naming it. Um, I think for which one, the desire.
Yeah, you wrote, I I remind myself that I don't need to gain anything. Desire.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm I, I'm continually trying to look at my thoughts, listen to them, and hear what they're trying to say. And a lot of, some of my thoughts that can get quite loud are, you don't have this, you should, you want, when you get that thing, you're going to feel better. When you get a bigger apartment, then you'll be okay. Then you won't have this flusteredness sometimes when you're in the cupboard. Or if I, once I have a job where I get this much money, then I'm going to be okay. Then finally, I'll, and that's an idea. I'll be okay. And that kind of thinking is like, there's a part of me, and if I have that thing, then finally I'll be whole. And that is, I'm realizing, not true at all. Like, we are whole at this very moment. We don't need anything. We can't take anything with us. And it can be a lot to feel, because those thoughts then show up in your body, and the tightness, and the energy behind words, and the jealousy that can come from looking at other people's successes. And that doesn't feel good. It does not feel good to look at other successes and things that I could want in life and say, oh, I don't have that. It's, if I come back to this moment, I am whole right now. I don't need anything to feel peace, to feel joy. And with that kind of energy, then I feel more capable to exist in this world and be my authentic self, enter into spaces where I can encourage others to do the same, and and engage in dialogue and reflection with others, and connect with people. It's I have to keep reminding myself, like, you don't have to have anything. You're okay. You're fine. You can be peaceful now.
I was
Do,
on
do
a
you find
yes, oh yes, I'm connecting. I was on a walk, maybe it was yesterday morning or the day before in the morning, and I was walking with my daughter. She's in the stroller. She's 11 months, and
Oh my gosh, congratulations,
thank
James. I
you.
didn't know this.
Yes, um, I don't have my phone on me, but I'd show you a picture. That's my thing now. I think that's everyone's thing that has a kid, but I'm like, I make sure I have a picture. Uh, Christina always makes fun of me because she'll say, "Hey, how you doing?" and I'll text her within 1 second a picture of my daughter.
I love that.
So I was going for a walk with my daughter, and I was thinking this habit energy is coming up for me as well. Like, okay, where do I need to get? What do I need to do? I'm thinking, how can I get more people to hear my podcast? How can I grow my business? How can I um, make more money? It's there's a lot of attachment to money, particularly in my culture, but I think in my family history. And when I say in my culture, I mean like born and raised Long Island, New York. So a lot of like drive towards money, and there's a lot of that habit energy in me. So it comes up. I call it habit energy because it's happening subconsciously. I'm not really choosing to go there. I'm walking. So I'm on my walk with my daughter, and this is coming up. How can I do this? How can I do that? And then I start following the question of like, okay, let's say I were to, you know, everything that I did turned to gold and I was entirely successful. And then I came up with this number, $37 million. I don't know, well, I do know why that is the number, but I won't go into that today. But $37 million. What if I had that? So I was following the question. Okay, I need more. I need more. I need more. That's the habit energy. And I catch myself in a moment of mindfulness and ask, what if you had $37 million? What would what would you do different in your life? And I'm a psychotherapist and I love it. So for me, the answer is I would still see my clients. I wouldn't stop seeing my clients. I would still do my podcast because I love these conversations. I would still wake up in the morning and go for a walk with my daughter. I would still live in the same house that I'm in. I'd still drive the same car that I drive. I really believe those things. Um, I thought maybe I would buy like $1,000 worth of nice clothes. Maybe I would do that. But then after that, I'm like, I'm not sure how different my life would be. I also thought maybe I would hire a personal chef to live in my house that would cook and clean so I would never have to do dishes again.
Mm.
But like,
Uh-huh.
but I don't need, like, it's like, but I can live without that. And I'm doing that right now. So
Hmm.
like in following the question, I'm like, what what is this habit energy? What does it even want? Because even if I were to have the thing that my habit energy is trying to make me get, it wouldn't make me happy. It wouldn't change anything. So in following that on my walk, I'm saying I'm already. I would be doing this. I'd be going for a walk with my daughter. That's what I would be doing if I had all of those things, and I'm already doing that. So what am I? What am I looking for? So
Mm.
like in that moment, okay, oh here I am. I'm on the walk that I would be if I had all that money. I'd be going on walks with my daughter. Well, I'm already doing that. So I think that's a testament to like me already having a commitment to mindfulness in my life. So, like I'm already doing that. So that's why uh, I I wouldn't be if I had more things, more money, things. I wouldn't be doing anything different. It's like, yeah, I think that's the end of my thought. What do you think of that?
Mm. I am resonating with that. Um, I that brings up a thought for me about Eckhart Tolle and how he he offers that the mind is that's what the mind does. It's compulsory, yeah, thinking.
Compulsory. Yeah, I think that's a word.
That's the word. It's the hard one. It's a compulsion to think about what you want, what you what you need to get, and once you get that thing, then you'll be okay. And then once you actually have that thing, you'll want more. And recognizing through mindfulness that that's what the mind does is super useful because then we're not we don't get caught up in that because you'll look at famous wealthy people and they get this thing and they don't they want more like any human really we want more quantity over quality and it's and it makes me think of like in meditation we're not stopping the thoughts, we're quieting them, we can dim them because that's what the mind does, it thinks. And that makes me that's what Corey I remember hearing Corey say that. I'm like, oh really. Okay, well that's annoying. But it's okay, like accepting that because we're human and we have minds. Yeah, helps us create the space in us to listen to the inner wisdom, gain insight, trust your gut, notice tension, you know? Like I was talking to you and I'm like, okay, my hands are on my knees, but I'm holding my breath. Take a breath. And getting out of your head and into your body is huge. Like your mind's going to do this thinking. So let's bring our attention to other parts of our body because we're not just floating heads walking around, James, right?
Well, and we're sort of look like that on the video right now, but like generally speaking, we're not that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh says over and over and over, bring the mind back home to the body. I think there's so much value in just my meditation, my personal practice is changing. Um, and it's sort of one of the reasons I haven't been teaching as much lately is because the more I practice, the less I have to say about it. I don't like the guiding of meditation requires me to say words. And I think about Ramana Maharshi, who taught for years in silence. It's like, well, something was going on there and he wasn't saying anything. So I bring the mind home back home to the body. For me, that's what has been coming up a lot in my practice recently, where that's it. Just be in the body. So like if you sit, just notice the body and sit and just sit. And then uh, uh, th- those are all the words that come up. Just sit. So there's nothing for me, even on my podcast lately. I haven't been doing guided meditations because I feel like what I would just hit record and I would say just sit and then just leave it for 30 minutes. And people want more than that. people want people want me to show them how to meditate, but I'm like, it's you just sit down.
Mhm. That can be so hard though.
Right.
I this makes me think it's so hard to sit and be in our bodies because if you think about it, when we're in um, primary school and and taught values and we're primarily using our intellectual minds and we're not there's like the first thing to go if you have to cut something is recess and I see that firsthand like I'm in the public schools and recess will go um, movement will go gym class is pretty staple but like an art class or like a theater class I haven't seen as much if at all a lot in primary schools like I think that so many schools could benefit from theater um, but just thinking about how what we're taught in schools carries with us in our bodies and in our minds and in our beliefs and in a math class you're taught to do a problem solve it and in 40 minutes you solve 10 of them and you're good to go. Well, that's not always the case in life. Like we sometimes we have ongoing things we need to tend to and cycle back to and face, and that can take time. And another thing we're taught in schools is that truth comes from authority. And if we recognize that, then we can start to say, wait a minute, does that show up in my value systems, in my beliefs? Who am I listening to for guidance? Who do I believe um, most of the time? Is it my boss? Oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I need to get, you know, I just, I'm just thinking about that. Like,
So my other question would be, you wrote, it reminds me not to grasp onto anything. Fear. Can you talk to me about that?
mm, yeah, I have a lot of fears and um, they manifest in different ways. So, grasping onto right now, I'm in my apartment and I I have a lot of stuff. And um, by holding on to these things, like I'm afraid I'm gonna like I work so hard for these things, like I can't let it go. I have to keep them because this is part of me and it's mine and I'm afraid to lose it because then what do I have and what money I lost and that kind of thing. Also, when I was at the lake in nature, surrounded by nature, I was with I was reflecting on my mom and dad, and it's it for me it's very it brings up so many emotions to think about what 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 life will be like without them. And I'm trying to remember that, just like the trees, I can be as still as a tree. I can be as strong as a mountain. I can be as still as the lake. Um, like the love and the memories live in my body. And my body, my our bodies will age, my body will age, and eventually we'll come back into the circle of life. And that's a fear, like that I have. I think some people share that. The fear of dying and letting go of something that you'll have to face, like, who am I without these people? What could I have done differently when they were here in physical form? But, you know, letting go of the fear can help me be more present with them now, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that is the irony of it, is the fear of the loss is potentially uh, it's creating distance between you being with them here now. And I don't mean you, just you. I mean we us. Um, I think about my daughter. She's crawling around the house, and she wasn't crawling, 6 weeks ago, and then she was, and now she's standing, and I could very much see time passing very quickly because of how much she's transitioning from day to day, week to week, and I, it brings me more in tune with, like, oh, I'm getting older too. I don't see it so much in the mirror with myself, but I see it in her for sure. I know time is passing when I see her. So there's like this tremendous joy of being in the moment with her, but then on the equal and opposite side of that is the sadness of that it is fleeting. She'll never be 11 months old again. I'll never be as old as I am again. Like they both exist, on two sides of the same coin. Like I was saying earlier, if we, like for me, my relationship with my parents as well, I've had similar moments of reflection, considering them, like when they pass. It's, what is that going to be? What is that going to be like for me? And but what comes up with that as well as the appreciation now, like, because we
Mm.
are mortal, because it is fleeting, because all things must pass, there's a beauty that comes from that. Because my daughter will only be 11 months now, that I might as well, I better get to enjoying it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Better get to enjoying it, James.
I better get to enjoying it. I Yeah. How does how does you said the truth is in my body? You were talking about these external forces, authority, before, like the truth and the learning is coming up from within you, and that's maybe the thing I had the most curiosity about. I've had similar experiences where I go on a silent retreat and nobody says anything. I don't look at anybody, write anything, read anything. I'm not engaging with anybody in any way for 10 days at a time, and yet I learned the most I've learned in a 10-day period in all my life. And what was I doing? I was just sitting in silence. So how does that happen? I know that it does happen, but I'm not sure I've ever talked to someone about, definitely not while being recorded, about how does that happen? How does sitting in stillness bring about experiential learning? So maybe in the context of you going to the lake and being with nature and stillness and silence, how did that bring you to, how does that work?
It's a good question. Uh, I'm not entirely sure. I This makes me think about our our societal values of like doing. of achieving, of the sense of urgency that we have in our bodies. Like, you go to a restaurant and the waiter is like already like, as soon as they approach you, like, hey, can I get you to take your order? Like nervous. And if it's not, it's lovely. It's always a pleasure to be, but like if you're sitting down and you're giving yourself like a certain amount of time to just be with your body, whatever discomfort, whatever boredom, whatever comes up, that's already a big step, because you're not doing anything. So if you're blocking out that time, you're just sitting, and you're in that space, you're saying, all right, what's going to come up? Like, it's an invitation, and it can come in. So if you're sitting down, it can come in the form of new thoughts. Like, I've gotten new thoughts when I was up sitting in around the trees. I There's an inner wisdom. Our bodies have lived, come with us all the whole time, the whole ride. They're here, and they've experienced everything that my eyes and my mind have as well. And so our bodies tell a story. And if there's a crank in my shoulder, I'm like, okay, why is that there? What am I thinking about right now? Oh, I'm thinking about the fear. Okay, can I let that go? Yes, I can. I'm here again. I just grew in awareness in that moment. Things come up. There, like there's for me, there's a drive to be my most authentic self. And what may be giving me some imbalance, I'm not sure. I'm not always sure. I'm living my life. I'm doing my tasks. I'm talking to people. I'm working. I'm thinking about things. I'm planning the future, reflecting on the past, ruminating. And then if I'm sitting down, I'm like, oh, I think I need more reminders of the stillness in my life. Maybe I'll get a plant. Maybe that thought comes up. It's a new thought that I created space for. And why, when I think about this person, am I already my eyebrows are like crunching? Like, I have to relax my face. What am I thinking about? Oh yeah, that moment I said that thing. I haven't forgiven myself for that. And you're creating space for I don't know, stillness, truth, exploration. And dare I say, guidance? I think that I feel connected to my spirit on the inside, like the body's here, and there's also spirit. And my spirit wants me to align with everything that's the best for me. So I want to listen to my spirit. And by sitting down and not doing anything, not even like biting your nails, or like writing, that's doing. You're just sitting, then things start to unravel and reveal itself.
I think that it's hard to put language to this process because by nature it's a ineffable. It's like can't be named,
Mm.
this process that is happening. And we're trying to name something that can't be named. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking of an image. A guest I had on the podcast, his name is Sunil Godse. He's an expert on intuition, and he told me that 90%. Now, I'm not sure the science behind this, but I think he said 90% of our experience is subconscious and 10% is conscious. And he used the image of an iceberg. Like most of the iceberg is beneath the level of the water, and you just see the tip of the iceberg. But there's really much more to it underneath the surface. When you were talking, I had the image of like the water level lowering. So
Mm,
as you're sitting with your in silence and creating space, and you said things reveal themselves, it's like the water level lowers and more of the subconscious becomes part of your conscious experience because you're creating more space. It's almost like creating more space for your subconscious to reveal itself, things that you've been holding on to, latent content, stuff that's been in our system. I remember, like you said, yeah, I haven't forgiven myself for that. Some of these things, they cling to us, they attach within our system, and we don't even think about them consciously. But if we sit in silence and we reflect, we meditate, maybe more things become conscious, and then we can look at, oh wow, I haven't forgiven myself for that. And then hopefully, if our relationship with ourself is compassionate, we can
mm,
smile to that. Oh, I haven't forgiven myself, and then we smile, and it's like, oh, the body was holding on to that, but there's this constitution of relationship with self. That's the other part of the practice that, I said before, you just sit and that's it. I think that's maybe being, it's oversimplified. There is like a strong part, an element that guides my practice of consciously building the relationship with myself to be more compassionate and kind, because from that space, from that like non-judgmental space, I think when this thing comes up, oh, I haven't forgiven myself. Maybe if I don't have that constitution of self care and kindness and loving kindness towards myself, really, then maybe I'll still hold on to that. When it comes up, well, should I forgive myself for that? Maybe there'll be some cognitive patterns that will cling. But if there's just a space of love and kindness, it's like, okay, if I'm not going to forgive myself now, then when am I going to? Some
mm,
From a place of kindness. John Kabat-Zinn says befriending, he uses the word befriending yourself. I love the use of
mm,
that word befriending. I always have the image of, people talk about building relationships with other people. How do they suggest you do that? Maybe you go out to dinner with them. Maybe you write them a nice letter. Maybe you sit on the bench with them in the park. Maybe you have nice words of affirmation for them. This is how you build a relationship with another person, but this is also how you build a relationship with yourself. Sit on the bench in the park with yourself. Write yourself a letter about nice things about yourself. Build a relationship with yourself the same way you would build the relationship with another person, and that helps build the constitution that when these latent things come up, maybe these things we were holding on to, they can dissolve, and we can move past them and be liberated from them.
mm, mm. Yes. Yes, that's so important. You just brought up such an important truth to this practice, like loving kindness towards yourself. What kind of voice in your head? What is the sound? Is it are they berating you? Is this voice in your head? It's you, but is it in a tone that is not kind? And with the practice, trying to shift that can shift the relationship to yourself. Which, yeah, yes, yes to all of that. I'm curious about that. Like how, so if you're, let's say, let's say you want to, let's say, maybe not forgiving yourself, but maybe you want to forgive the other person. Like, and you don't, maybe you don't want to forgive it, but you remember that they did something. And how do you go about being kind? Like just shifting. It's a subtle shift in your mind's eye. Say it kindly to yourself. Speak gentler words. That's how I do it. But to say like just be in loving kindness is is super difficult for a lot of people, myself included,
I
sometimes.
think my my answer to that, and I have to tell you that I have to be conscious of the time. We have maybe about another 5 7 minutes left, but I'm going to answer this question, and then maybe we can start moving towards closing this session. This what do you call it? A podcast session? Yeah, podcast session. uh,
Yeah.
um, uh, the when I'm at my best, like I'm not always doing this uh, at my best. But to answer that question, how do you forgive another person? When I'm at my best, I'm seeing that there's really no difference at the center between me and that person. That's where I think like this oneness comes in. That we're not separate. We're not separate from nature. I mean, there's science that points to that with genetics, but spiritually, yeah. I have a friend who told me he went out camping, and he was looking up at the sky. There was no like light pollution, noise pollution. He was just connecting with the sky, and there were fireflies all around. It was just him in the field with fireflies, and he's like, in that moment, I couldn't put words to the connection, but I was no different from the stars. I was no different from the fireflies. There's that like interconnection. I think there are a lot of different religions that point to this, but if when I'm at my best, I can see not only am I not separate from the stars and the dirt and from all things, but I'm also not separate from this person. That if I'm having a hard time forgiving them, then I, it's helpful for me to realize they're not separate from me. That me and them are one. I mean, there's that on a deep spiritual level where it's like we generally are the same thing, the essence of the same thing. But then there's also just like a personal, more like cognitive human level where the way that I suffer, they're probably suffering in a similar way, and the way that they acted, maybe that came from some fear, some trigger, something. And if I could look underneath the surface of, well, maybe they acted in that way for some reason. And even if they didn't, why for me to forgive them is more for me than for them. It's about my relationship with myself in forgiving them. It's so that I'm not holding on to the anger. It's for me. It's so it goes back to the relation. Forgiving another person is helping build a relationship with yourself, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. To remember we're all one. And it's maybe the forgiveness, if it's for you primarily, being like, I have to let this release. I have to release it. And then I can continue being this work in progress. I love that, James.
Okay, so we're running out of time, but the one thing I don't want to forget, you are an artist, and I think that people listening would benefit to engage with your art. So you mentioned, I think, an Instagram. How can people engage with your art if they wanted to?
Uh, well, if you go on Instagram and you um, find me, then uh, I'm trying to be more open and honest now. So, and with my mindfulness practice and um, my my struggle with mental illness, my quest for freedom and expression, I would love for people to offer what they'd like to see and ask questions and enter into a dialogue with me. I love hearing people's stories and learning from people. That does not stop. We're always learning. So engage with me, and yeah, I'm just gonna keep working on stuff, developing stuff. So yeah. Oh, and
Uh,
the Instagram is Georgia Violet with tweets.
what is it? Maybe you'll send me a link and I'll put it in the bio of the episode. But you can say it also if you want.
That'll be great. Um, I'll say it. Georgia Violet with two T's.
Okay, Georgia Violet with two T's. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think that we should do this again. There should be a part two at some point.
For sure. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, bye bye.
Thank you so much for having me here. Hi, James.
Bye bye.